Good evening, everybody. Welcome into episode 15 of the Fuzed Relativity podcast. How's everybody doing tonight? John, how are you?
Splitting headache, but here.
Ooh, splitting headache. That sucks.
That
Wait,
spaceship takes off every time. That kills me every time. That's I'm not saying it's the best part of the show, but it's a good part of the show.
well, John, thanks for powering through and showing up this week. A lot of this stuff isn't possible without you, so kind of need you here.
Yeah.
Right. You're not just saying you have a headache to get out of sex, are you?
Wait, what?
You're a married guy. You don't get that reference? Come on, what are you talking about?
I was gonna say, yeah, that's an old reference. Or old.
Yeah, I know, but this is a podcast with three dudes. I digress. uh, Git Fiddler. I'm gonna need some clarification on that. But how are you doing this evening?
Doing good. Git fiddler is my favorite term for guitar player. I'm a big blues Stevie Ray Vaughan fan, and he did like a DVD with his mentor Albert King, and basically he just goes, "You got the makings of a good Git fiddler," and I'm like, I like that because it's longer, but it's kind of stupid. But if someone calls you a Git fiddler, you're getting it done.
Okay, well there you go. See, I couldn't figure it out, but guitar. Now it makes sense.
Right. Did you guys have guitar class in high school? Did you do that?
No,
No.
not really. They had like music class, but that was for people who,
It's like
you know.
band.
Yeah.
Right, orchestra. Okay. Yeah, we actually had it. I did it for like 2 years in high school, and pretty much the most interesting day was one of the seniors who was a really good guitar player. He forgot his guitar, and he was getting irritated by some annoying freshman punk who annoyed everybody. And that day he didn't have his guitar. He had nothing to do. He was trying to quit smoking, and he just went over and punched the kid, and then walked to the office very calmly. But you know what I mean? It's no guitar and no nicotine. And you're a senior. Freshmen are even more annoying. So don't antagonize someone trying to stop smoking.
Probably good advice for everybody.
And don't start smoking, kids. That's the better advice.
Yes.
Well, yeah, let's PSA that. Well, before we start the show, I was going to throw it out live on the air. Thursday was my birthday, but also my twin brother's birthday at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Imagine that. But I was going to give a shout out happy birthday to Nim Fu, who I see is listening this evening, co-sharing the same birthday. And
Do you remember to call him? Because it's hard to say you forgot, because it's the same.
yeah, I figured I would wait to the podcast and throw it out there because, you know what? It felt more special. What can I say? He doesn't want to hear me talk.
What a lovely birthday present, not hearing Chris talk. And also getting mentioned on a world famous podcast. So what a thrill.
That is, see? You get it.
Right, that's better than any gift could give. Because billions of people are going to hear his name, and it's going to be a big charge for those billions of people who I assume are watching, listening.
Yes, we will wait to see what gifts roll in.
And if it says like, you know what, if we only have 4 people, that's just fake news. That's what that is. You know what I mean? There's more than that.
Always getting brought down. That's right.
It's big corporate. Right? They're trying to keep us from getting too big because they don't know how to handle it because we're all independent. Woo! We're not run by big oil, man. Okay, that was your hippie moment of the day.
We're fused relativity.
Exactly. You know what? We're gonna solve global warming. We don't know how, but maybe we'll put on a jacket. Something.
John, get on it. All right. So we decided that this week, I think we're going to jump around a little bit, kind of like we did last week, and just bring up some stuff that might interest us at the moment. And I know John's got some education stuff he wants to talk about, but I think I'm going to jump in first because I need him to educate me. And basically, I just need to know, what is a super Earth?
So it's, and I'm, as I told them before, it I'm not 100% on the exact definition, but it is a planet in a habitable zone that is larger than Earth, but smaller than a gas giant, I believe. Something to that effect.
So if Jupiter is a gas giant and Earth is just a, habitable planet, it would be somewhere in between those two.
Yes. Oh no, sorry, not gas giant, ice giants. So Neptune, Uranus.
So far away from the sun, the colder ones.
Yeah, it just it's essentially just a planet that's habitable, that's bigger than Earth.
Now, why do they call it super Earth? Like, it seems like Earth should get its own name. Like, is like our planet? It seems like it just has a separate name. I don't know. Why is it super?
I'm assuming because it's bigger.
Super might be the referring to. I'm guessing now that you've mentioned it, I'm assuming super just means bigger than Earth.
Yeah.
Bigger than, okay, all right, all right. That would make sense. You know what? That checks out. I'm gonna fact check that.
Like Superman.
Yes.
Just like Superman. Okay,
Right.
well, I read a story this week about, apparently they're doing some research on exoplanets that are they're looking and saying they have water. They are super Earths, which we just discussed, and they're rocky planets that are orbiting not a traditional sun but a red dwarf star, and they're looking at them as possibly being habitable zones for us to, migrate to.
And when you say they're rocky, we're not talking about Sylvester Stallone, right?
Yeah, no Balboa.
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. But I lost my train of thought on that. Thanks, Kirk.
So, and we kind of discussed this a while back when we were talking about aliens and the like, but there's billions of stars just in our solar system alone. And in theory, each one has planets, and in theory, each one has a planet in the habitable zone. It just kind of, I mean, most stars should have at least some planets that are at least somewhat livable.
When we say
So-
habitable zone, are we talking just temperature?
Goldilocks,
Like,
yeah. So it's just in the zone where it's not going to be too hot like Venus or Mercury, and it's not going to be too cold like Jupiter and beyond. Because I believe Mars is technically in the habitable zone. The problem is it doesn't have any tectonic activity, so it doesn't have the magnetic fields to A, keep the atmosphere in, and B, well, mostly just keep the atmosphere in. Because if it had an atmosphere, it would have liquid water and likely have life.
Mars is cold as balls.
That's because it doesn't have an atmosphere. Oh, and it's only cold at night.
Oh. Okay, that makes sense. Why would it be? The helicopter wouldn't survive in the day if it was as cold.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, so the average temperature on Mars is 57 degrees. No, that's Earth. That says 81. Yeah, I'm almost positive that during the day it's at least warm-ish.
I meant it's just like a desert. Like in the at nighttime, it drops off, but then as soon as the sun pops up, it heats
Yeah.
up. I imagine it's an extreme version of that.
Yeah, so Mars is high and lows. Its high is 86 degrees. Its low is negative 284.
Ooh.
But
Yikes.
that's because it doesn't have the atmosphere to trap the heat in, and B, it is farther away, so it doesn't get as much heat. So if it had a thick atmosphere like Earth, it would be able to trap the heat and maintain a temperature, or a more decent temperature. It would still be a whole lot colder than Earth, but it would still be potentially livable if it had the atmosphere.
So wait, if it's that cold, would you like at nighttime that the bottom temperature, like if you put your tongue on the dirt of Mars, would it like you'd stick to it like ice? I mean, would it be that? I mean, that seems like it's colder than ice.
Negative 284, a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
But I
you'd
mean,
you'd basically flash freeze if you went outside in that.
but if you look at Earth, if it had an atmosphere and it had its temperature was at least somewhat relevant or somewhat stable, you would still potentially have life it um, if it was tectonic. Because if you look at Earth, I mean, we have penguins and all sorts of stuff that live in Antarctica.
yeah, and just the weird stuff that lives at the very bottom of the ocean with like no
Yeah.
light and that amount of cold. Yeah, life can live in some weird places.
There's slugs that live next to oceanic vents that have, I want to say iron, but I could be wrong, in their bodies.
Right. Like, can you imagine like the bacteria like forming like in the armpit of Chris's undershirts? Like, that's got to be horrible. I don't even know that. You know, there's
Yeah,
But-
we haven't.
nice. We haven't done that in a little bit, so there you go.
Yeah, it's a running gag. It wouldn't be a Fuzed Relativity podcast without some references to Chris's odor.
Well, the exoplanet that they were talking about, John, it was, they said that it was an atmosphere. It had an atmosphere, and the temperature, because of the distance from the dwarf star, was, they said, an average of about 130 degrees. And I was thinking, I'm like, 130 is hot, but
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it's totally far-fetched to say that humans could potentially adapt to that in some way, hold an umbrella, something like that.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, oh, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
oh, go ahead, Kirk.
Well, I was just getting like I'm from Phoenix. I just the high soon is 115. So like people are already living damn near. Yeah, 130 doesn't seem that far off. And I watched a vid in the like just basically they're painting all of the roofs white just to save on the amount of electricity needed. Just because if you have a black roof, it's just going to fry under the sun and get absorbed, so your AC bill goes down, or just stuff like that. So like the guy was like saying, we're going to be innovating for the temperature rise coming for other cities soon. It's like we're almost the leader of figuring out how to live in this ungodly hot.
Well, heat seems to be more easily adaptable than cold. I mean, you can do things to stay cool easier than warm up in the extreme cold. So that was where my brain was at, thinking, man, we could potentially fly to and see about habitating one of these exoplanets.
But the problem is, did you happen to see how far away that exoplanet is?
I want to say, oh man, how far is Mars?
20 light minutes? No, that's to Earth.
I was thinking it was 90 light years, I want to say.
Yeah, which would take us thousands of years to get to.
Oh. Did you say the phrase light minutes? I've never heard that before. I've always heard just light years. Is that a thing?
Yes. So it's I think an easier way to think of distance, because humans in general, we focus on small numbers. We can quantify small numbers. It's much harder for us to quantify large numbers, like the difference between a million and a billion. Sure.
At a certain point, it becomes overload. It's just, you can't even, like, I can picture 100 penguins. If you tell me 700 billion penguins, it's too many penguins. I know what right?
So if you, another measure of scale would be like light minutes. So it takes light from the sun to get to Earth 8 minutes, which would be 8 light minutes because it's light speed. So if light takes a year to go, its ridiculous amount of distance, it only takes 8 minutes to go to Earth. Whereas I want to say the distance between Earth and Mars is about 20 light minutes. Because it takes.
So would you just light minutes is it's easier to understand for shorter distances? You know what I mean? If
I
you're
would
still
assume.
traveling, is that what it? Okay, that would make sense.
Because let's look at.
I don't even really understand light years, so I think I'm just gonna go with what you say.
Yeah, so the distance from Earth to Mars is 217 million miles. Again, that's something that's hard to quantify because you can say, I know what a mile is. I wouldn't be able to fathom how big 217 million of them are.
Right. That's a long road trip. That's a lot of pee breaks.
Yeah. Hopefully you stocked up on jerky for that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. You gotta have the snacks with you. You got just for something to do. Just it's honestly like if you're driving for 8, 9, 12, like just the boredom. I think it's just like to keep your because you can just zone out, especially on the highway and it's straight. Man, you can kind of go on autopilot too much where you're like, oh wow, okay, what was the last 20 minutes? I wasn't paying attention, but I'm still driving 80 miles an hour.
Well, that was kind of my question on that. I mean, I know we like to talk about the idea of, going to Mars and habitating there and part of my intellectual process was we're looking at Mars, but Mars isn't technically the most habitable spot.
Yes.
If we could yet. But if we could find something that is considered a super Earth that's in a habitable zone that's not super cold at night, that we don't have to go bury underground to survive, why aren't we looking there first?
Distance. It's all distance. So, well, yes, Mars is our closest technically planet. To get even the closest star, which is 8 light years, I think it's Proxima Centauri and not Alpha. It would take, with our ships, if we were to build a ship and send it now, it would take 1,000 years. Just look at the Voyagers. They've only just gotten out of the sun's sphere of influence, and they're still, nowhere near where
it is kind of hard to think about the distance that those Voyager satellites have traveled, considering they're flying at thousands and thousands of miles per hour for 3 decades at least, and you're saying they're still not out of they're barely out of the sun's sphere of influence. Holy crap.
Yeah, so here, this brings back up my other point. So Voyager 1 is 14.1 billion light years away from, not light years, sorry, billion miles away from Earth. It is only 17 light hours away. So
I think my brain just sizzled a little bit.
Yeah.
At a certain point, like I don't know, does anybody else make the analogy? Like it seems like because these things are just going out and exploring this vast, huge nothingness. But like back in Columbus days, do you think they guys in ships were kind of had a similar mindset of like because they really don't know what's out there and they're going to try to go gather new information, but it's kind of a crap. Or do you think people back in the day were like, "Why are you going there? It seems scary. Don't do that." Or do you think it was? I don't know. It just the vastness of it. It just seems it just has multiplied. It's just gotten much bigger.
If you look back on Columbus, his goal was to find India because he wanted a faster way to get spices, and they kept telling him, no. There's no reason to go around the world. We already know the path to India.
He's like, there's got to be a quicker way.
Well,
There's always like there's got to be a better way. It's very much uh the commercial, the Ron Popeil guy, the shopping network thing.
I wonder how pissed.
Infomercial.
I wonder how pissed everybody would be if it turns out that the Voyager is just one really big game of like Pong up in space. Eventually, the Voyager satellite's just going to get knocked back the other way.
Oh, it's like dink, donk. Yeah, that's the level of the technology. It's just really, and it hasn't progressed much from after Pong, except for just video games. But NASA only uses that.
Right. Well, switching gears, John, I had kind of a listener request this week, and I'm going to throw it on you to see if you can explain in words, because this is a podcast, how to level the bed on a Ender 3. We're talking about 3D printing and how to level the print bed.
So, John, before you do that, before you do it with words, can you at least attempt it through interpretive dance? Because I think that would be more. Through word. What other? Yeah, he's going to do a smoke screen. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
So as I was telling Chris, I am not the best person to ask for this because I wimped out immediately and bought the BL Auto Touch for my Ender 3. But the way that it was shown to me through YouTube is using a piece of paper and manually adjusting the. I want to say you bring the head down to the center of the table, make sure it's nice and level there, and then you bring it to all four corners with the piece of paper between the nozzle and the bed, and adjusting the bed on each corner until the paper just barely catches.
Just like a normal piece of paper, not some fancy space computer, just normal. Okay.
Yep, just a piece of paper.
So essentially, you're just lowering or raising the bed to make it so that the nozzle just barely grabs the piece of paper on each corner?
Yes.
I imagine it's a little trial and error there too. It seems like kind of like a delicate thing. I imagine you might, okay, that's it. That came out. That's a little too high. I got to lower it. I imagine it's a lot of back and forth.
Well, and the problem we had with ours was that the Z end stop was too low, and the nozzle never reached the bed, even completely, with the springs on one of the sides completely undone. It just wouldn't reach the bed. It was a known issue with Enders, and the solution was just to break off a little tab and move the Z end stop up or down so that the nozzle could reach the bed. And then, I had it working then, and then I just chickened out and bought the BL Touch because I'm way too used to Pressa's auto leveling too.
Well, and as a guitar player, it seems. Tuning your guitar, you can try to learn it by ear, or you can just get a snark tuner and like when it gets in the right, and then you're good. To me, that's what it seems like. It's same thing. Like you could fiddle with it, and if you can tinker, if you want to do something intricate, I guess you could do it. But it seems like the auto leveler would be the way to go, just to simplify stuff.
Yeah, essentially.
I don't know why I just did a commercial for auto levers, but I did. They should be calling.
And you said that's called what? The BL Touch?
BL Auto Touch.
BL Auto Touch. All right. Well, that's something to look into.
It's
for sure.
My advice, if you do look into it, make sure you get the correct one for the board of the Ender 3. Because the first one I bought was for the older ones, and it looked like a pain in the ass to install. Mostly because I took apart the Ender 3, put it together, and it just realized it was the wrong one. The upgraded boards, which is assuming mostly what they're selling anymore, is much simpler. You just wire it back through the harness, plug it into the board and then deal with the software and it auto, and then you calibrate the bed, and that's it.
I just can't believe BLT auto touch hasn't been taken down by social media people yet. That seems like that would have been me too a long time ago. Nobody likes the auto touch. Ass first, fellas. No auto touch.
Also, you are full of PSAs this evening, Kirk. I'm glad we got. I'm glad we can share that with everybody. All these PSAs.
If I have some wisdom to pass along to if we just help one person, well, we could have done better. But come on, it's all about just he'll tell one person, and then just the world gets a little bit better because of fused relativity.
Yeah, let's we'll keep pitching it and see how far we can take this. Maybe we'll pick up some sort of sponsorship from this. Who knows?
Who knows? Or just change the world. Either way, way to go for the corporate aspect of it. Yeah, Pat. No, I'm trying to save humanity. Chris is trying to make a couple dollars.
Sounds about right.
Oh yeah, have you guys sold any new stuff, merchandise, or selling stuff? Is it Etsy?
Yeah, not so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's skip that. Then that's moving on.
We have been. I know John's been busy, and I've been, of course, busy with the new baby. So we haven't had a real chance to get much stuff up there. So we're working on it. It's just.
Do you think you guys could 3D print a Switch when your kids are old enough, so they don't have to go cut their own Switch? No, is that too Southern? You guys know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. It's just generally frowned upon nowadays.
No more Switches. It's ruining the tree too, so we can't deforest. So that's.
Unfortunately, when he said Switch, I thought of the Nintendo Switch.
I thought of the Nintendo Switch too, and then I was like, oh no.
He's
going Southern domestic beating a child thing. Yes.
Yes. The Nintendo Switch is much more fun.
Yes.
I imagine. I hope so. If it's not, they should really update it and change it.
I can't believe I spent $300 on this.
Right, and it's as much fun as getting beat by a tree. It's not a good system.
Well, John, I think we could go ahead, guys. We usually take a break right now and do Kirk's Corner, but we are going to switch things up, keep you on your toes. And Kirk's Corner will be a little bit later in the episode, so I'm going to toss it. I'm teasing it. That's what I do, Kirk.
Well done.
So it's nice when you point out my teases too, all the time.
I'm just a fan. You know what? I'm in the I'm doing the show, but I'm also listening to the show. So I was like,
well, hey, I actually appreciate that. Most of the time, you don't listen to me, so it's.
Well, I try not to. My doctor told me not to. It wasn't good for my health anymore. Just my heart couldn't take it.
So I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to John. He wanted to talk about education this week, so let's see what you got.
So I made them watch a video that was about 6 years old now, before the podcast started. I'll put it in chat right now. Obviously, if you want to give it a watch, but we're gonna go over this kind of right now. The topic is "Don't Stay in School," and it's by a YouTuber called Boy in a Band. And the premise of it is what fascinates me the most. And it's not about not staying in school, obviously. It's more about reevaluating what gets taught in school.
Right. To me, it seemed like it was like we learn all the different crustacean period, like these weird scientific things, but I don't know how to help a friend with depression or do a checkbook. Or that was sort of the gist I got. It's like you're giving us knowledge isn't really useful and not sending us into life with the skills that we need. Was the gist that I got. That's what I took away.
And especially going forward, my thought is, high school, me and Chris, I don't know about you, Kirk, but our high school was, um, we got to pick our classes that we wanted to take. We had the mandatories like math, English, science, all that. But
Yeah,
then
the
we had,
basic core classes. Yeah.
but then we had electives to take. Like I took architecture in my freshman year. Um, there was CNC,
Yes. Same thing. Yeah, like just with I took guitar. You know what I mean? Yeah, we had electives for sure.
but there wasn't a lot. Like I had to fight. I remember this because it's something I wanted to do. But in middle school, I wanted to go to, what was it, home ec? What was it, cooking? Basic
And sewing. Yeah.
basic life skills. And I had to
Mhm.
fight to get into that because they're like, "Oh no, you really don't want to take this class." And I'm like, "Yes, I do." But
They
it
were trying to
was,
steer you away from it. That's odd.
yeah, I don't, I mean, granted, this was 20 years ago, but probably more than 20 years ago because it was middle school. Um, but yeah, they just didn't want to, you know, home ec wasn't, it really was just sewing and cooking, which,
Right. That's what I remember doing. I remember we made a pillow, which I was desperately behind, and then I took it home, and then my mom kind of finished it on the sewing machine because yeah. So I wasn't a good pillow maker,
but it was only
which
offered,
was a good skill.
and if my memory serves, it was really only offered to like one grade that could take it. And that was it. There was nothing in high school that was relative to that. It was just in middle school. And, you know, I just think with jobs and things going more trade based, electronics, electricians, plumbers, stuff like that.
And they keep there's a shortage of all of those guys. They say
Yeah.
like they go we can't even find people that like they're paying people to be trained. So there's no even apprentice. It's like they have to lure them in. Like, look, we'll pay you $15 so we can teach you the knowledge. So then you could kind of help be our apprentice schlepper guy. And then, but you're doing the easy jobs, and then we can focus on the higher stuff because you don't have the skills yet. But we can't even find people to come do that because it's like a lot of manual labor has a bad thing, and anything to do with plumbing, I think just young kids are like, ooh, toilets, gross. Like I really think it's to that level of just I don't want a job where I work with toilets and pipes.
But we're still not there. There's no, like, our high school didn't even have an automotive. To my recollection, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I don't remember them having an automotive.
Yeah, I think ours was getting phased out. I think that's sort of, and it was like your generation was sort of like it seemed like recess was getting phased out, or where like that was a possibility of like or PE or like the electives were getting shrunk just because they didn't have the budgets. Is that because mine was okay, but it's like it wasn't great, but it was you could see it kind of going down. You know what I mean? And you guys are a couple years after, so I assume it was even a little worse.
Yeah, because
I was just gonna say, I think now, because I know the electives when I was in school were fairly limited. There wasn't a whole lot, but I know that a lot of schools are pushing the STEM aspect a lot more. Science, technology, engineering, and whatever M stands for.
mathematics,
Oh,
which
anyway,
is fine, but there are still people that aren't STEM.
Those are all of the things I'm horrible at. I would
Yeah.
hate that. All of those classes you just said. Oh, like there's like math. I was hanging in with math, and then like you threw in letters, and I'm like, fuck you. Math is numbers. I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but
Well,
and then
see,
it just took a while to click.
and that's it. It's STEM is great. We need more STEM. It's just not everyone's going to be STEM. Not everyone is designed for STEM.
The engineer guy, he loves it. There's that mind. I think it's zeros and ones versus somebody who wants to like paint or like make us write a song or do something like that. I think those are the two brains I've seen.
But see, and I know Kirk doesn't exactly like programming and whatnot, but at least when I went to high school, there was no real programming aspect of it. And granted, this was late 90s, early 2000s. There was no programming, and I'm assuming it's changed since then, but there just needs to be more practical stuff. Like, and I'm sure both of you can relate, every year there was history. I mean, how many times did we have to learn the same historical events over and over and over again? And I love history.
They had different. I mean, there were big things they always talked about, but yeah, I don't know. It seemed like here's U.S. history, here's world history. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember a lot of repeat. I mean, the big events, yes, everybody said, but I don't know. And maybe I liked history,
Well,
so.
and see, that's the problem is, like, I like history too, and if I went back and said, you know, what would I have changed with history? I would have said nothing because I liked history. But at the same time, you know, yes, it's not a bad thing to learn history to try and not repeat mistakes that have been done in the past. But at a certain point, how many times do you need to learn about Rome, or do you need to learn about Rome?
You know what? Because I mean, history. If history is memorizing dates and events, but if you take it as you're learning about. I think it humanizes people, and there's sort of a story to it, and also hopefully there's a bit of relatability that sinks in, because it's like, okay, well, I mean, even though it was 400 years ago, they were still people, and they were struggling. It's like, okay, it was more of food and defense and stuff, but there were still, I don't know, that guy married that guy, and they had families, and they had thing, and they fought over this. I think it's like the best history teachers I had were the ones that could almost make it seem like a story, or they could like paint the picture, as opposed to just this happened on this date, memorize it. You know what I mean? That's a huge difference.
See, and that's a lot of what I remember, is just having to remember dates that I've long since forgotten.
Right, because those are, and it's not practical, but like the lessons learned from the human interaction, or just the human psyche, or just the human repeating itself. Oh, I see that pattern in human beings. Maybe we should, and then you might be able to at least ease it back a bit, or just notice like, oh, they're just warring over, or it's over land, or I don't know, whatever it is. But it's just like, it seems just it repeats itself, so it's just noticing patterns is a big thing. As like I said, in this. Yeah, just a history teacher is a good history teacher is 10 times better than just the dates. And it's sad when you take something interesting and suck the fun out of it, make it boring, so people can't focus and they don't care about learning it. That's what's sad.
I'm on both sides of the fence, I think, on this one, because in a sense, I see where you guys are coming from, but one, you have to have the people to teach the skills. Two, you have to basically get people involved, who are high school kids who are going to change their mind 15 times before they even get out of high school as to what they want to do. And granted, you might be learning some skills or trades or whatever it might be, but it could end up being just as much a waste of time in the long run as a history class or a math class. But
and that's at the end of the video, he said it isn't about not making stuff mandatory, or it's about not making everything mandatory. Everything should be introduced. So, how many kids go through school not realizing that you can be a plumber or an electrician, or like, for example, my job that I do right now, I had no idea existed. Yes, I knew people did it, but until I got a job in the hospital working around people, I didn't know it was a thing.
So if you're not introduced to something in high school, just a class, and maybe ceramics, or or some sort of art, painting, or just whatever. Hey, I might be. And yeah, it's true. If you don't try it, and I think that's the part of the having to have the good grades and get into the college. So it's like, no, you have to take exactly these classes to impress the college recruiter, and then get good grades, as opposed to just learn like expanding your horizons, and like educating yourself, which is what it's supposed to do.
And even then, it's absolute horseshit outside of like Ivy Leagues. Like most college kids or high school level kids can graduate and get into whatever college they kind of want to, unless
Yeah,
you're going.
colleges want your money.
Yeah,
they're all yeah, they're come on in. We got you.
unless you're going something hyper focused. But then, like, so in high school, my first major focus was aerospace engineering. And I was focusing very hard on getting into the School of Mines. So I had done Calculus 2 by the time I was a junior.
Hmm.
Because I think I took Calculus 1 in the fall and Calculus 2 in the spring. Because that was my dead end, I'm going to be an aerospace engineer. And I'm going to the School of Mines. By the time I graduated, I was a volunteer firefighter and going to UCCS for pre-med.
Did you ever was it partly burnout? Because I think that happens to a lot of kids with that. I mean, school or sports, they do something since they're 4 and they just do that, and then eventually I think they just get sick of it after a while and they just stop doing it. Was burnout a part of it?
I think burnout of school. Because I think a big portion of it was by the time I got to high school, or by the time I was at my senior year in high school, they didn't have any classes to offer me. So I was one of the first people I don't think I was the first, but I was allowed to go to Pikes Peak Community College as a
Community
senior.
college. I was just about to. Okay, nice.
They paid for me to
Please.
go to EMT school.
Oh, there you
And
go.
the rest of the time I worked at Walmart. Because I think I got out of school most days at like noon. And then I would just go to Walmart and work. And I think that freedom of not having to be in school really didn't negatively affect me. But when I went to UCCS to try and do the pre-med stuff, I was just like, I don't want to deal with 4 more years of this bullshit.
Well, yeah, well, and it's just you were like, and it's like if you were in that routine and in that habit, and that's all you know for years, then you don't know anything else. So when you get a little different taste, you're kind of like, whoa, hey, you know what I mean? Because like when you're in it, I think you just got the blinders on and you don't know any difference.
Well,
But when you, yeah,
and see, and that's what I understand. That's my other big problem with school that I wanted to talk about was, we send kids to school 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, where it's essentially a full-time job from the day they're 5 until the day they're 18.
well, to me, my theory, it's maybe this sounds a little negative, but like it seems like school is just it sets you up to step into a boring 9 to 5 job. Essentially, because it's like, look, you're younger, so you can't last the full 8 hours, but you go from like 8 to 2 or 8 to 2:30. You have a supervisor who tells you what to do, and you just shut up, don't cause waves, just do what they say. Just you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it seems like, and then you just, all right, well, I did that, and like semesters, you do it for a year, and then hopefully, if you work for a corporation, and you have a mindless job, you do a job, and maybe they promote you in a year. So it's like just a new. To me, it just sets you up to step into a office job. Maybe
Well,
that
and
being
even
negative,
then,
but
well, no. I mean, I'm assuming A, it's part daycare, B, it's part, yeah, getting you ready for the working world, but they don't actually get you ready for the working world.
just the
Um,
pattern, just the schedule.
yeah.
That's all
See,
they're doing. They're just laying the groundwork.
and that's why obviously not advocating for everyone, but my kids are in online school. Um, and honestly, if I had the choice, I absolutely would have done that instead of going to regular school.
Right, you don't have to deal with I mean, the douchebags and the no. I mean, you don't have to go there, and especially it seems like there's so many jobs nowadays. Most of the jobs your kids are going to be getting are most likely working from home, or I mean, in an office on a computer. So they
Well,
better get used to computers, which they already love.
and it's just you know, society pretty much dictates and is reliant on those high school students coming out of jobs and going straight into low level retail while they go to school or do whatever until they get the, higher up job. But I don't know. It just I'm not a big fan of how schools are run
Oh, here, just
anymore.
you mentioned that. Just here's I remember when I went to college and when I came out of college, I was trying to get jobs at places, and like the people that just high school just went straight into like working at Costco, say, were like now like the managers at the places I was applying for. You know what I mean? Like so, like
Yeah.
they. And there's something to say just like and like college isn't for everybody, and I think it's oversaturating. There's too many majors that there's not jobs for anyway. So it just seems like it's almost it's just become a societal norm where if you don't go to college, you're going to be a bum in a ditch making $4 an hour. Like you know what I mean?
Well,
That's like the sales pitch of guidance counselors. It seems.
that's all. Yeah, I was gonna say that's always what they push
All
out
about the
is
money.
go to a 4-year college, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, I I agree that college is necessary, and like for my kids, they're going to hopefully go to a community college first, just to
It
get
saves you money. Take care of the base. That's a
yeah.
smart English 101. Why would you don't have to go to a big university, knock it out at a community college. That's just yeah, that's good.
And that was the mistake I think I made is I went straight to the 4-year college and hated it. And then I went to the community college where, it's not you're not having to have that almost high school-esque workload right off the bat if you don't want to, and it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, well, they said it was high. I mean, community college. They said it was high school with ashtrays for a little bit because it just. I mean, it was a little step up, and it just didn't have the expense and the I don't know the
But
pomp and just kind of the. It just to me, they didn't say like it took it too seriously, not in a bad way. But they didn't take themselves too seriously. Like it's like, hey, no, you're gonna learn some skills. This is good. Let's do this,
well,
and it's a
and
great way to save money.
most community colleges are the schools that teach you the trades.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go to UCCS and learn how to be a plumber. You are gonna go to Pikes Peak and learn how to be a plumber. It's the 4-year colleges are great for those bachelors and those degrees to get you into the doctor and all those extreme. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just thinking PhDs. Whereas the community colleges, you know, I was going for an associate's in fire service. I was going for an associate's in paramedicine. I was going for an associate's in
Smaller class sizes. You can get more you can get a little back and forth with the teachers. You know what I mean? Like that was yeah. I mean, when you get like 80, 100, like nice 20, 30, classroom. That's what I remember community college being.
It's starting to feel like an infomercial for National American University
yeah.
in my head.
What's your thoughts, Chris? You haven't said much.
I'm against education. I don't need no. If you think you're better than me with your book learning, that's what Chris knows. Go ahead.
I was kind of letting you guys seem to be on a pretty good roll with how you felt about it. I'm kind of on the opposite side. I mean, I'm more of the put your boots on the ground. If you want to be a plumber, go, train under a plumber. If you want to be a construction guy, go to work for a construction company. Start by holding the stop sign and work your way up. I happen to find a job that I do pretty well in, and I went to college. I didn't finish college. I met my wife in college. That was the best thing that could have possibly
You got
happened.
something out of college. Nice.
I did. But in the same token, I was always, I landed in a job that had nothing to do with my college.
Yeah, they
And
rarely seem to match up. Or a lot of times,
And
totally unrelated field.
I would say I'm the opposite, but I went to school for a trade, and now I'm working that trade.
And that's fine, if you want to go to school with a clear idea of what you want to do, which is something that you said, hey, I want to be a X-ray tech, and that's what I'm going to do, and you are now an X-ray tech. Kudos for that. But my problem is, it's kind of the same pit. Why not go get paid to do something and find out that you may not like it, rather than go to school for 2 years and get into the job and realize, oh, this sucks. I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life.
Well, and see that kind of fits into what why I brought up the video and everything is I don't think everyone should be I think everyone should be introduced to a wide variety of potential trades. I'm not saying teach high schoolers how to be plumbers. What I'm saying is have a class that's these are the types of trade jobs that are available. Not a class where it's like, oh, hey, this is what you're going to be doing, but having it to where kind of like the job fairs that they try and throw, where 100 different companies come in and try and recruit you, but having it as a class where you're exposed to all the different types of potential trade jobs.
Yeah, well, even something just seems like I mean, not here's how to be a plumber class, but it's just like here's some tools. I think if you get to see I think taking the mystery away, because I think a lot of people put certain fixing your car or tools or like electrical stuff. I think they put in the category if that's way too fancy or just complicated, I'll screw it up. I don't know how to do it, and then they never even see a wrench. But it's like, all right, there's a wrench. This is what a wrench does. At least they're familiar. Because I think a lot of stuff is just being afraid you're going to break it. And I think if you just show kid, look, you're not going to, you can unscrew this and hinge that. Nothing exploded. You know what I mean? You're fine. I think that something like that would be at least a basic step in the right direction.
I think just getting people exposed to the different types of jobs. Because like I said, obviously I knew x-ray techs existed, didn't have any clue of how to become one or what they did or, all
Right.
of that until I started working.
And you still don't.
But I mean, that's kind of my thought is we need to start showing kids what type of jobs are out there. Like,
Right.
it not necessarily.
You can't be all internet influencers. A couple of you might have to get jobs.
Yeah, it's just we need to start, and that's kind of the point is preparing kids for the real world. And that was the point of the video was we don't go over anything like first aid or mental health or anything like
right.
that.
I never viewed school as the place to get educated and smarter. I viewed it as a thing to navigate, to get get out and get grades and get a scholarship, and it was just sort of like a precursor to just a job. You know what I mean? Just you got to put your head down, just get through it. Just why fight it? Just like it's easier if you just go and just knock it out. It's really not that hard if you just show up. It wasn't that taxing.
I'm like the, once again, the like 70-year-old man, and I'm going, isn't it more fun sometimes just to have to figure it out on your own? Don't have someone holding your hand all the way through it. Plenty of people have figured it out over the last century. So I feel like, yes, we can hold kids' hands, but when does it stop? And sometimes you're going to trip and fall, but if you can get back up and figure it out, you learn from that, I think, just as much as someone telling you, hey, this is how you get a mortgage. You're probably going to want to get a fixed rate. Okay, well, that's fine. But until you do it and you learn what you're getting into, it's a lot different than someone telling you.
Right, yeah. If it's like in the theory, like if you're not doing it now, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to remember any of that stuff. But if you're actually doing it and you learn by actually doing it. I'm with you.
Well, and not everyone has that drive. You've got to remember that too. There are people out there that just don't have that drive to fix, just do what you do.
Well, then they shouldn't have a mortgage.
Yeah, that seems fair.
See, like I said, I'm the get off my lawn kind of guy, and it's just, that's kind of why I'm like, you know what, I see your points, and they're valid, and I understand that, yes, we could help younger generation out, give them a little bit of help. I'm all for that, but let's not make them too soft to where we're having to baby them all the way through the process. And then, what happens when they get a job that they hate and then they start blaming the people who taught them? Or,
Yeah, but that
it's a
happens
slippery
now.
slope.
You're still giving Benjamin food, right? You haven't cut him off from that, right? You haven't made him get a job yet.
Uh,
I kid.
Delilah's working. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, that's good. I imagine bouncer. I'm picturing a bouncer at a country bar. I don't know why.
They passed her over for that one.
Oh, darn it. It's all who you know.
But anyway, yes, I do see where you're coming from. I think there's a very fine line between helping and hurting. And that would have to be, it just have to be something that would have to be drawn out to the point where, we get a little better idea of how these things are going to affect people before we just start randomly implementing it.
I'm just saying, like I said, not forcing kids to learn trades in high school. I'm just saying having classes that are designated to teaching about the different types of trades. Especially the ones that are more, unique. Like, I don't know if you remember, but growing up, I always wanted to be a garbage man. Until, everyone was... Because growing up, being a garbage man was seen as, low end. And yet they make more than most teachers do.
Right.
It's something that we should be looking into, as in just showing kids what's out there. Not necessarily, pushing them into it, but just showing them, hey, this is what you can do. It's up to you if you want to do it or not.
You expose it. Yeah, just expose them to stuff. That's what you're supposed to do. And then hopefully something will catch their fancy, and then they'll gravitate towards that.
I'm not saying, guide them through it, but if you show kids that, the wide berth of jobs that are out there outside of cooking food and running retail, it'll give them a chance to say, hey, I kind of want to try that. I didn't even know that existed. That sounds like fun. And if they fail, then they can go on to do something else. But at least we are exposing them to jobs that are out there that aren't as well known.
Sure. Like I said, I see the premise, and I'm all for certain aspects, but I don't think you're going to sway me on this one. And I still don't like that guy on the video.
He was pretty annoying.
Well, hey, John, that was very good actual conversation. I liked the topic. I just kept quiet because I maybe disagreed just a little bit. But let's jump over to Kirk's Corner and see if he can lighten things up a little bit.
All right.
All right.
To forewarn, I did not change anything. Once again, mostly just headache today and wasn't feeling too hot yesterday, so it's the same as last week.
Next week, John. Come
I know,
on.
But
come on.
I'll be quiet for just a second.
All right. Well, I thought Kirk's Corner. We talked about one of the weeks ago. We did. I talked about being a substitute teacher, so I thought it was time for another job. Just basically, if you've ever done any artistic stuff, you just take whatever job you can get. So I've had a lot of them just to do, so I could do stand up. So this one I want to talk about. I was a busser at a restaurant, and have you seen the Slammin' Salmon? You know that movie with the yes, the high end, fancy, very kind of a little douchey but expensive, clubby kind of restaurant. That's where I worked. I worked at a high end, people were racking up $1,000 tabs. It was insane. Probably the coolest thing, as a baseball guy, you like this. One time, Bob Costas walked in with Joe Torre, and they had a meal. And I got to actually just hearing Bob Costas's voice 10 feet from you is weird, because you're like, that's the guy from the TV, and he's there.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
So yeah, but anyway, so high end place, and Steven Seagal popped in. That was weird. Anyway, so it was interesting, folks. But just as a busser, it was me and a sea of little It was in Arizona. So it's me and a sea of Mexican busser guys, and they called me the BFG. That was their nickname for me because it stood for Big Friendly Gringo. Pretty much because I was the only one who could reach shit on the top shelf. They're like, "Hey, can you grab that?" I'm like, "Of course I can, my little Hispanic friend. There you go. There you go." No, don't they? You can. They were not busting my balls at all. I'm sure. The only white guy walking. Not, they were not making fun of me at all. Um, Actually, yeah. But I was 29 at the time. I was 29, and like I didn't have, no kids or anything. Like, try explaining to your Mexican busser buddies that you're 29 and you don't have any kids. Like, they just didn't. They never. It's like they knew those words, but just not in that order. They're like, so you have no kids. So they're in the car? They're not in the car. Zero niños. Um, and then actually, you know how I knew I made it? The day I knew I made it was when the Mexican bussers would complain to me about the other white bussers that they didn't like. When they brought in a new guy and it was a white guy and he wasn't handling it, they started like, man, this gringo sucks. And I'm like, I know, wait a sec. I should be offended, but I was honored that they didn't put me in that you know what I mean? They're like, no, you're one of us. You made the cut. Because I remember one day, like the Cheto, this 43-year-old, like the silverback of the busters, like just one day after I've been working there for months, he just stood next to me and he goes, you work hard. And I'm like, he did not want to say that. You know what I mean? Like, I earned that. Like, so that's like when I knew I was in. And we actually for a while we had an Asian busser, but he, like, when he would give people water, he would just do it drop by drop in the middle of their forehead until they went crazy. And I'm like, yes, put it in the glass.
Ah,
Put it.
oh,
What? Speak Chinese to water torture? Nothing? Okay. Okay.
yeah.
All right. All right. How about, okay. So there was a dessert. People would ask me, like, I was the busser, and they would still ask me questions. They're like, what's the difference between the sin chocolate cake and the death by chocolate? And I'm like, I don't know, eternal damnation, I guess. I think that would be the um this is actually, and not to do with another restaurant. It was I went to a Middle Eastern restaurant, and they didn't have any silverware. So I was like, I had to ask the waiter, I had to call the waiter over, and I'm like, excuse me, is this my salad finger and is this my meat finger? Okay, the only reason for that joke was so I could say meat finger. Okay, moving on. Two more. Oh, it was just odd working in like I had to get my food handler's card to work at this thing, and I'm not sure if you ever had to do a food handler's card, but like everybody tells you it's the easiest job. It's the easiest test. An idiot, a monkey, Chris. Like you step above a gorilla, right? You could knock it out. So I showed up to take the test, and I already had a college degree, and I failed the food handler's card test because everybody told me it was easy, so I didn't even, you know what I mean? Like they oversold it, and I actually failed it. I failed it twice. I had to take the food handler's card test 3 times with my college degree. It's just odd to, like, on your wall, there's my college degree, and there's my food handler's card. I'm like, I thought I was supposed to get that one, so I didn't have to get that one.
Only took me 3 tries.
3 tries. Hey, it wasn't, could have been 4, I guess. But meat finger tall. Yeah, you know what? I think that about wraps it up. But yeah, so the busser thing. It was fun for a while, but had to move on to greener pastures. I forget what the next one was. I'll have to think of it next week. Stay tuned to see what my next job would be.
I really like hearing about all your jobs just because you've had so many.
It's sort of like I rode the rails. You know what I mean? Like I got like a knapsack over my shoulder, sort of, but I just go from job to town. Last about what? Right? It's like, hey, you want some benefits? I'm like, ho, hey, let's get a little close here. I gotta go.
Getting a little clingy job.
Exactly. Like they go, do you want to they go, do you want to sign up for a 401k program? I'm like, there is no way I can run that far. That is too many Ks. Can we say a fun run?
Anyway, John, I think I heard you there that you are back. So we will round out the episode with a little bit of off topic, and I'll go ahead and
screw it up this week.
Nice. That's always good.
Wait.
But I figured I would start off with mine just to throw out some stuff here. And It was a fun story about a lobster diver off of Cape Cod who got swallowed by a whale. He was diving, of course, for lobsters, and I think he was like 45 meters down, somewhere around there, and a whale came up and just swallowed him whole.
Yep.
And yeah, this seems like that's a terrible way to just swimming along. Oh, whale.
What are the odds? Seriously, do you think the whale just like was trying to get like other stuff, and he just what? Or do you think he was aimed for him? Because it seems like a whale. You're just like, hey, I'm going for krill or whatever. The fish they eat, and he just got sucked up in it.
Yeah, pretty much. In the story it said that whales feed by like going really fast and just intaking everything that's in front of them.
Right.
And then they just spit out whatever they don't want. And so I'm assuming he just got caught up in the wake of that. And interesting note that whales they have huge mouths, but their throats aren't big enough to swallow a human. So this guy
He
said
got it stuck in his throat.
no. He basically said that he got sucked into the whale's mouth and thought he was, dying until he
Right.
realized that there was no teeth and that he wasn't in any pain. So he said that he was just stuck in this whale's mouth, completely dark for, I think it was 30 seconds, until the whale was like, oh God, what is this? And went to the surface and basically spit him out.
I liked it the first time when he was called Jonah. Okay, can I say that, Denny? um, yeah, and he would. Yeah, that's an odd. Well,
Yeah.
and when I first read it, I thought it said lobster driver. I didn't. I read it wrong, so I thought it was like, I go, what the hell is a lobster driver? That, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. So it stumped me at the beginning, but yeah, just like what bad luck to get hawked. Do you think he made the hawk loogie sound?
I really hope so. I
He
mean, if
kind
you're,
of had to patoot him.
if you're gonna swallow a human and then spit him out, you might as well make the loogie sound.
I mean, might as well, because I'm sure he didn't taste great,
No,
and
imagine
he wasn't less filling either. Heyo.
it.
Yeah, he did an AMA, and yeah, he said it was about 30 seconds in. Whale just came up behind him. He didn't even know it was there.
If it was
So,
me, if it was me, the whale would have turned around and booked it the other way. So
yeah, he's like, I'm not putting that in my mouth. That's the I don't know what that is. That's toxic waste dump.
but yeah, that was my fun story. I came across it and I thought it was fun and nobody got hurt, so ended up just fine. And the guy got swallowed by a whale, which probably one of the few people who could say that guy.
I was about to say that's like an odd, that guy will have an interesting story. So, what did you do? Oh, I got swallowed by a whale. Okay. There's got to be a lot of follow-up questions to that. If you let that lie, you're just a bad friend. You're really not interested.
At least it'll be good for a free beer or two back in the Cape.
Right. He roots for the Whalers from now on. He's scared to root for the hockey team.
Well, John, did you have a story lined up for us this week?
I did not.
I wasn't sure if you did or not, so I was just asking in case I needed to throw it to Kirk, because I know he has one that he can bring up.
Oh, yeah, no problem. You got a headache. You don't have to do the end of the thing. You made it through the whole show with a headache. You don't have to do the story. That seems fair. All right. My story, actually, it was a book. There was in Indiana, somebody mailed back a library book that was 52 years overdue. So that just blew my mind. Just somebody checked out a book, and it was Little Men, which I don't know. I'm assuming is about midgets. I'm not sure, but I don't know what Little Men is. It's like a children's book. But I guess the girl, like, I just like the fact that somebody checked it out and then kept it that long. And she just goes, "Oh, I like the book." So I just, and it moved to Tennessee and all over the country. This book had like an interesting life, and then it was like, yeah, I'm done with it after 52 years. I guess Sad thing is, she didn't have to finish it. Come on, you had it for 50. And Chris, books are things that people read. There's words, and it's not, if it was covered in cheese dust, you might take a pass at, don't eat it, but they're books. They're not, no, I was kidding.
I would not have like to be the one to pay those late fees.
You would, yeah. At a certain point now, she like she owns the library now. Well, I guess what happened, the lady actually, with the book, she sent like a donation. It didn't say what it was, and then in the story that actually goes, the book was so old it wasn't even in the computer system anymore because they didn't have one when they checked it out. So it wasn't even on their radar. So they said they would just charge her $5. So she got a bargain. She got a bargain for that book.
In my head, I'm like, after 52 years, it almost seems more like a slap in the face to send it back, because you're basically saying, hey, I took this book 52 years ago and I didn't have any intentions of sending it back, but nah, I changed my mind. You can have it.
I got my use out of it. I drained it of its knowledge. You can have it back, I guess. Yeah, I could see it. That's kind of a dick move.
Yeah. I feel like, she could have just kept it. Nobody would have ever thought about it ever again. And now it's a story that we're talking about on our podcast.
Yes. Well, I think that was number 15. I think that
yeah, episode 15. I keep getting blown away by the numbers. You think about like when we started this thing and now we're already on episode 15. It's been kind of a whirlwind.
Yep.
No, every week we've been steady.
And I'm still enjoying it, so that's always a good, you like to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And the baseball was enjoyable too. So when we start doing that too, you'll have to follow us on that, because that was a good baseball sports conversation for like an hour.
On I think it was Wednesday, me and Kirk did a little stream, baseball stream, where we discussed sports kind of all over the place, but turned out it was really fun and it was good conversation about sports. So if you're into that, we'll probably do that again this week. And I watched me play some really bad baseball, but well, I can't hit, but I can pitch. So it's just half bad. How about that?
There you go. That's, or you could say half good if you want to be positive, if you want to be optimistic, Mr. Downer.
Hey, I still won the game, so
that's true. You did. Pulled it out.
Well, with that, for me, Chris, John, and Kirk, we'll go ahead and sign off for the episode 15, but we do look forward to seeing you next week, episode 16, and I hope everybody has a good evening.